At 30 years old, Martha believed her life was over. Though she was a devoted wife and an exemplary mother, she was an invisible woman, betrayed by the man who had promised her eternal love, abandoned by a town that pretended not to see her, and worse yet, forgotten by herself. But one early morning, alone in the kitchen, with tears falling onto an old notebook, she made a silent and revolutionary choice. I will find myself again. I will rise. What happened next wasn't easy, but it was extraordinary. Martha faced contempt, overcame fear, and discovered something no one expected, that a woman's greatest strength is born the moment she stops asking for permission. If this story moves you, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel. Because stories like Martha's aren't just meant to be watched, they're meant to be felt, to be lived.
50-year journey from silence to empowerment, Millbrook, 1975. The small town, so tiny that gossip traveled faster than light, seemed the perfect setting for an old-fashioned fairy tale. I, Martha Jhonson, at 22 years old, had just married Robert Williams, the son of the respectable owner of the only hardware store. Look at this wedding photo. I look so happy, don't I? Radiant, with eyes full of dreams and a naive belief in the future that Robert, a good catch with a steady job and traditional family, promised. My mother used to say I had caught a good fish, and I believed her. The first few years were a blur of domestic happiness. In just 5 years, we had Sarah, 1976, Michael, 1978, and little Bobby, 1980. Our house on Elm Street was modest, but it overflowed with life and the scent of roses from my garden. I dedicated myself to my family, to the church prayer circle, to school parties. My life was a soft melody of routine and affection, or so I thought. I was the perfect wife, the devoted mother, the helpful neighbor. My world revolved around the well-being of others, and I was proud of it. But real life, my dears, is not a Hollywood romantic movie. The melody began to go off-key. Robert, once attentive and present, started working late, coming home exhausted and barely speaking to me. I, the expert at justifying, found excuses for everything. He's working hard for the family. He has a lot of responsibilities. I need to be more understanding. And in this process, I was shrinking, making myself small, almost invisible. I had stopped reading, stopped dreaming, stopped having my own opinions. I was disappearing a little more each day, and I didn't even notice. The worst part? I started to believe that this was normal, that my role was just to care, serve, and be silent. My world shrunk to the four walls of my house, and I became an extension of it, just another piece of furniture in the decor. March 1983, a Tuesday that etched itself into my memory with the sharpness of a cruel photograph. Sarah was 7, Michael 5, and Bobby had just turned 3. I was hanging laundry on the line, the warm sun on my back, the smell of soap in the air. When the phone rang, the sound seemed jarring, a premonition of something bad. It was Dorothy Peterson, her voice nervous, hesitant. Martha, listen, dear, I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, but I think you need to know. My heart pounded, a drum in my chest. In a small town, when someone calls with that voice, it's never, ever good news. I felt a chilling shiver. Dorothy told me that Robert was being seen with Linda Patterson, the new librarian from Nashville. Young, a college graduate, everything I wasn't. She had seen them leaving Red's Diner, holding hands, laughing like a couple. It was as if the ground had vanished beneath my feet. I couldn't even breathe. Dorothy continued, saying that it had been going on for months, that half the town already knew, but no one had the courage to tell me. The humiliation hit me like lightning. I cried right there, on the kitchen floor, hot tears streaming down my face and mixing with the dust on the linoleum like a helpless child. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the shame, the pain of being the last to know, of being poor Martha who doesn't notice anything. That night, Robert came home at 10, working late as always. The smell of his cologne, different from mine, turned my stomach. I waited for him in the living room, fury and pain burning inside me. I confronted him. And do you know what he said? With the utmost naturalness, he lied to my face, his eyes fixed on mine without a hint of hesitation. Martha, you're imagining things. Dorothy Peterson is a gossip. My voice trembled, but I insisted. I said I knew, that the whole town knew. Robert's mask fell. He got angry, said if I didn't trust him, it was my problem, that Linda was just a friend, that I was paranoid and jealous. And then he said something I'll never forget, something that echoed in my mind for years. Martha, do you think I'd throw away my family for a silly fling? You're the mother of my children. That should be enough for you, enough for me. As if I should be content with scraps, as if deserving love and fidelity was asking too much. His voice was cold, calculating. At that moment, lying in bed next to a man who lied so easily, I had a devastating realization. I didn't even know myself. Who was Martha Williams? What did she like? What did she dream of? I didn't know how to answer. I had become just an extension of Robert, and now I wasn't even that anymore. The pain of invisibility became unbearable. It was as if I had erased myself to fit into his life, and in the end, even then, I wasn't enough. The night after the confrontation with Robert was the longest of my life. I couldn't sleep. Every minute felt like an hour. Lying next to a man who snored as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just destroyed my trust and my dignity, I felt a mixture of numbness and a growing anger. The pain of betrayal was excruciating, but the realization of my own annulment was even more so. It was as if I had woken from a deep sleep, only to discover that life had passed me by and I hadn't truly lived. At 3 a.m, unable to bear the heavy silence of that room, I got up and went to the kitchen. The air was cold, and the house, plunged into darkness, seemed to echo the emptiness inside me. I picked up an old diary I had received for Christmas, a gift I had never used, and began to write. The pen scratched the paper, and the words poured out, mixed with tears that dampened the pages. I wrote, until my eyes were swollen and the paper was blurred. I want to read to you what I wrote that night, my dears. Who am I? I'm 30 years old and I can't answer that question. Am I Robert's wife? Am I the children's mother? But what about me, Martha? What happened to me? When did I stop existing? Robert is with another woman, an educated, independent woman who has her own life. And me? I'm just a shadow, a person who takes care of the house and the children, but who has no voice of her own. I am a ghost in my own life. Rereading those words now, I feel the same tightness in my chest that I felt that dawn. It was there, at that moment of deep vulnerability and brutal honesty with myself, that I had the insight that changed everything. I realized that Robert's betrayal wasn't just about him being with another woman. It was about me having become such a dull, lifeless person that he had to look elsewhere for what I could no longer offer. Not because I wasn't capable, but because I had forgotten who I was. But let me be clear, the betrayal was never my fault. Never. Betrayal is always a choice made by the person who betrays. But I understood that if I continued to be that faded Martha, I would continue to attract disrespect, continue to be treated like a piece of furniture in the house. The cold dawn air was cut by the first rays of sunlight filtering through the kitchen window. It was there, at 4 a.m, that I made the most important decision of my life. I was going to find myself again. I was going to discover who Martha Jhonson Williams was. And if Robert couldn't love this true and whole version of me, then he wouldn't deserve my love. I walked to the refrigerator and looked at an old photo of my 3 children, Sarah, Michael, and Bobby, so small, so dependent. I thought, what example am I setting for them? For Sarah especially. How will she learn to value herself if she sees her mother nullifying herself? It was then that the decision solidified. I wasn't just going to change for myself, it was for my children too. I needed to be a model of courage and self-respect. The next morning, after Robert left for work and the children for school, I did something I had never done in my life. I lied. I called my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, and asked her to watch Bobby for a few hours because I needed to get some medical tests done. My voice was a little shaky and my heart was pounding, but a small wave of rebellion ran through me. In fact, I was going to do something much more radical than a medical exam. I was going to enroll in the GED program at the night school. You see, I had stopped studying in my second year of high school to get married. At the time, it seemed like the right thing to do. Robert had a job, wanted to start a family, and everyone said I didn't need a diploma to be a good wife and mother. I believed that. For years, I believed that happiness came from meeting the expectations of others, from fitting into the mold that society expected of a married woman in Millbrook. But the Martha of now would no longer accept those molds. The rebellion had begun. I drove to Millbrook High School with my heart pounding as if I were committing a serious crime, each beat echoing in my ears. Every curve in the road seemed like an invitation to give up. Every house I passed, a reminder of what my life should be, a life of predictable routine and silent sacrifices. The streets seemed narrower, the air denser, permeated with a mix of anxiety and excitement that made me feel alive. The old Chevrolet Nova swayed with every pothole, and I felt that with every mile I was moving away from the Martha I was and closer to the Martha I was destined to be. I parked the car, my hands trembling on the steering wheel, and looked at the school building, imposing and frightening, a brick giant that represented both my past and my uncertain future. Upon entering the secretary's office, I was greeted by Mrs. Collins, the secretary. She looked at me with a strange expression, a mixture of surprise and curiosity, when I explained what I wanted. Her glasses slipped slightly down her nose, and she pushed them back up with her finger, scrutinizing me from head to toe, as if trying to decipher an enigma. "Martha Williams," she began, her voice carrying a tone that mixed recognition and skepticism. "Aren't you that Johnson girl who married Mr. Williams's son from the hardware store?" I confirmed, feeling a blush on my cheeks, as if I had been caught red-handed. And then she asked the question I knew was coming, with a tone that questioned one's sanity, a condescending smile playing on her lips. "But dear, don't you have 3 young children? Why do you want a diploma now? You're already so well settled in life." It was the first time I had to defend my decision to someone outside my own head, and it wasn't easy. I stammered, fumbled, words seemed to get stuck in my throat, choked by years of silence. But then, an inner strength propelled me, a flame I didn't know existed. I looked at her, my voice struggling to stay firm, coming from a deep place of conviction, almost a whisper that turned into a roar. "Because I want to, Mrs. Collins, because I need to. I need something that's just mine, something that defines me beyond the roles I play at home." She looked at me for a long time, her eyes evaluating, perhaps seeing something in me that even I didn't see, a spark of determination. And then, to my surprise, a soft smile appeared on her lips, a smile that wasn't mocking, but understanding. "Good for you, dear. Let's see what we can do." That validation, coming from a figure of authority, gave me new breath, like a gust of wind under my newfound wings. I filled out all the paperwork right there. My hands trembled as I wrote my name, this time with a pen that seemed to trace not just letters, but a new destiny, a new identity. Classes would begin the following week, twice a week, from 7 to 9 at night. Mrs. Collins explained that I would need to study math, science, history, English, subjects I hadn't seen in over 10 years, and which had never been my strong suit, especially math. The word algebra hung in the air like a dark threat, a monster I would have to face. As she spoke, I felt a wave of panic. How would I manage? It was a mountain too steep to climb for someone like me who could barely climb the attic stairs without getting out of breath. When I got home, Bobby was playing in the backyard with Mrs. Henderson, the image of innocence and happiness, oblivious to the revolution his mother was starting. Mrs. Henderson asked me about the tests, and I lied again, with a lump in my throat, feeling the weight of the falsehood. I said everything was fine, that the doctor just wanted some regular follow-ups. Every lie hurt, because I had never been a liar. I had grown up learning that honesty was a pillar of good character, the foundation of everything. But I knew that if I told the truth, everyone would try to dissuade me. They would tell me I was crazy, that it wasn't for my age, that I should focus on my family, that I was selfish. This revolution would have to be secret, at least for now, a secret kept under lock and key in my heart. That afternoon, while the children played in the living room, the noise of their toys calming me, I went up to the attic, my new sanctuary, my secret refuge. The air was dusty, and the light, dim, barely managed to penetrate the small windows. But there, among old boxes, dusty furniture, and forgotten memories, I found my old high school notebooks, dusty and forgotten. They were a portrait of my old life, a reminder of what I had left behind. When I opened my math notebook and saw the equations dancing on the page like an indecipherable code, those letters and numbers that seemed to mock me, a foreign language. I almost gave up. The voice in my head, cruel and relentless, whispered, "Martha, you're crazy. You're 30 years old, 3 children, a house to take care of. Who do you think you are to want a diploma now? You will fail. You always fail." Discouragement invaded me, heavy like a wet blanket, threatening to suffocate me. But then, the images of the previous day, Robert's words, the humiliation of the betrayal, the feeling of being invisible in my own life, surfaced with overwhelming force. The pain of those memories became my fuel, my driving force. I thought, if I don't do this now, when will I do it? At 40? At 50? Or never? That voice in my head was silenced by an iron determination. That humiliation spurred me on. I opened the notebook again, and with the pen in my hand, began to unravel basic algebra. It seemed like Greek to me. Every symbol, every number, an enigma. But every problem I managed to solve, no matter how simple, was like a small victory, a glimmer of light in years of darkness. It was as if my brain was waking up after years of slumber, cracking, readjusting, discovering new connections, a new world of possibilities. I spent the rest of the afternoon immersed in books, scribbling, erasing, trying, with a hunger for knowledge I didn't even know I had. The sun set, and the light in the attic became even dimmer, but I didn't stop. My mind, once so confined to domestic routine, now buzzed with new challenges. I felt a hunger for knowledge I never knew I had, an insatiable thirst. That night, Robert came home at 9:30, working late again. The sound of the key in the lock, his heavy footsteps in the hallway. I was in the kitchen, pretending to just read a magazine, my heart pounding. He barely looked at me, grabbed a glass of water, and went to the living room to watch TV. He didn't even notice that I had spent the whole day studying, that I had taken the first step in my journey of liberation. He didn't notice the change in my posture, in my gaze, in the energy I exuded. This made me realize how invisible I had become, even to my own husband, and how this invisibility was, paradoxically, my greatest weapon now. A cruel irony, yes, but also a powerful driver for my determination. He could ignore me, but he couldn't ignore what I was becoming, the woman who was blossoming right under his nose. Chapter 4. The Attic Refuge and the Discovery of an Ally. The attic became my sanctuary, my laboratory of discoveries, and my nightly refuge. No one questioned my disappearance to organize old things after the house fell silent and everyone was asleep. In the dark and silence of the night, under the dim light of an old lamp, I would climb the creaking stairs, my heart pounding with a mixture of exhaustion and adrenaline. There, among dust and forgotten objects, I unfolded my books, my notebooks, and my new life, as if I were unraveling a map to a hidden treasure. The first GED class was, indeed, terrifying. Imagine, a room full of teenagers and young adults, some recently graduated from high school, others seeking a second chance, but all, for the most part, much younger than me, with the energy and vibrancy of youth. And I, a 30-year-old housewife who barely knew how to turn on a calculator, sitting in the back row, feeling like the oldest and dumbest person in the room, the intruder. The teacher, Mr. Davidson, was very kind, but I felt completely lost. The math concepts seemed to fly over my head, unattainable, like birds I couldn't catch. But you know what? For the first time in years, I felt alive. Even with all the difficulty, even feeling dumb most of the time, there was something in me that was awakening. It was as if a part of me that had been dormant for years was finally opening its eyes, stretching, craving knowledge. It was a good kind of tiredness, a tiredness that came from effort, from learning, from challenge, a tiredness that was worth it. I had to study each lesson 3 times more than the other students, reread paragraphs, do exercises repeatedly. Look at these pages, full of errors, scribbles, tears of frustration, the marks of my struggle, each one a testament to my perseverance. There were nights when I cried with anger because I couldn't understand a simple equation, or because exhaustion overcame me and I fell asleep on my books, my body heavy, my mind exhausted. But to my surprise, I discovered an incredible aptitude for English and history. The words, which once seemed trapped inside me, now poured out in my essays, revealing thoughts and opinions I didn't even know I had, a voice that had been silenced for a long time. My teachers praised my writing and my analysis, and I felt a warmth in my chest. When Mr. Davidson congratulated me on an essay about women's rights, a discreet smile formed on my lips, and a small spark of pride ignited in my chest, illuminating it. I, the Millbrook housewife, the wife who shrank away, writing about female empowerment. That was a sign, a premonition of what was to come, a glimpse of my future. The hardest part, however, wasn't studying. It was keeping the secret. Robert, with his limited perception, began to notice that I was different. One night, as I was preparing breakfast, he commented, without taking his eyes off the newspaper, his voice monotonous. "Martha, you've been a little strange lately. More, I don't know, more talkative. You're always daydreaming." My heart almost stopped. I thought he had found out. I forced a smile and mumbled something about being more relaxed. Maybe it's age. And he went back to his newspaper, seemingly satisfied, without questioning further, without noticing the depth of my transformation. I was always on alert, hiding my books and notebooks, disguising my tiredness, maintaining my usual facade like an actress on a stage. It was then that God, or perhaps fate, placed an angel in my life. In Mrs. Eleanor Davis, a retired teacher from our church. She was a lady with lively eyes and a welcoming smile, with a wisdom that seemed to overflow from her soul, an aura of peace and understanding. One Sunday, after church service, as I tried to pass unnoticed in the crowd, she pulled me aside, gently holding my hand. "Martha, dear, you are radiating a different light. There's something new about you. What's going on?" I don't know why, perhaps the vulnerability in her gaze, or the kindness in her voice, but I trusted her and told her everything. Robert's betrayal, my decision to go back to school, the secret, the difficulty, the mountain of challenges I felt I was climbing. Mrs. Eleanor didn't judge me for a second. On the contrary, her eyes shone with pride, as if she already knew what I was becoming. She said, with a warm smile and a firm squeeze of my hand, "Dear, you are doing the bravest thing a woman can do. You are investing in yourself. You are fighting for yourself. And you know what? I'm going to help you." My throat tightened, and my eyes filled with tears, an immense relief flooding over me. From that week on, Mrs. Eleanor started coming to my house twice a week to visit and have tea, a perfect excuse for Robert and the neighbors, but in reality, she was helping me with my studies, transforming my attic into a private classroom. With her help, math, which was once an insurmountable barrier, began to make sense. Mrs. Eleanor had infinite patience. She explained things in the simplest way possible, using everyday examples, transforming abstract numbers into something concrete and understandable. She didn't just teach me numbers, she taught me to believe that I was capable of understanding them. And more importantly, she believed in me in a way I had never believed in myself. Her faith in my potential was a beacon in my darkness, a light that guided me. There was one afternoon when Mrs. Eleanor said something that changed my perspective forever. We were studying American history about the suffragettes, and she, with ancestral wisdom, looked me in the eyes and said, "Martha, these women fought for your right to vote, to study, to be independent. You honor their struggle every time you open one of these books. You carry the torch, my dear." It was at that moment that I understood I wasn't just studying to get a diploma. I was studying to claim my place in the world, to prove, first to myself, that I was capable of being more than just someone's wife, someone's mother. I was Martha, and I was worthy of having my own dreams and my own voice, a voice that echoed the voices of all the women who came before me. 6 months after starting, the results began to show. I got an A in English and history, a B in science, and, well, a C in math. It was a hard-earned C, a victory C, but considering I couldn't even do basic division when I started, it was a resounding victory. Mrs. Eleanor was prouder than if I had won a Nobel Prize. But the most important thing of all this wasn't the grades. It was what was happening to me inside. I was becoming a person with my own opinions, my own dreams, my own voice. I was finding myself, and this transformation did not go unnoticed by everyone. The sparkle in my eyes was undeniable, a light that could no longer be hidden. With every class, every book read, I felt an inner strength I never knew existed. My mind, once dormant, now buzzed with ideas and questions. I was blossoming, and Robert, with his narrow vision and desire for control, couldn't understand, or pretended not to understand, why I needed to study. For him, my pursuit of education was a personal rejection, as if I were saying that the life he offered wasn't good enough. His wounded masculinity manifested in small sabotages and big accusations. The arguments, once sporadic and veiled, became more frequent and bitter, infiltrating like a dense fog into every corner of the house. Every time I was absent for night classes or for the refuge of the attic, a heavy, accusatory silence settled, loaded with resentment. Robert began to use the children as an argument, a sharp weapon he wielded with surgical precision, hitting me exactly where I was most vulnerable, in my motherhood. Bobby cried all night because his mother wasn't here to bathe him and tell him a bedtime story. He would say, in a low, calculated voice, dripping with guilt, "Sarah got a low grade in math because you didn't help her with homework. You were too busy with your books." Or even, the cruelest and most insidious of all, uttered with an air of victim that turned my stomach, "Michael said you love your books more than you love your own family, that you prefer college to us." Each of these phrases was like a stab to the heart, precise and painful, poisoned by doubt. Because, my dears, a mother's greatest guilt is to think she's not doing enough for her children, that she's failing in her most sacred role. And Robert knew exactly where to press to make me question my choices, to make me waver, and, ideally, drag me back to my old place, to that version of myself that he controlled. The guilt gnawed at me from within, a slow, constant acid, but the memory of that dawn, of my promise to myself and my children, that I would be an example of courage and that they would have a mother who valued herself, prevented me from giving up. It was a fire that, although sometimes flickering, never went out. There was one night when I almost gave up, when the flame of my determination seemed about to extinguish. Sarah, who had always been my ally, my little confidant with eagle eyes and a sensitive soul, came home crying from school. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face, usually so cheerful and expressive, contorted in an expression of pain that broke my heart. A classmate, probably echoing adult gossip, had told her that her mom was going to abandon the family to become a teacher and never come back. She asked me, her voice choked with sobs that tore at my chest, "Mommy, don't you love me anymore? Are you going to leave us, like Jenny's mom left her?" My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces seeing the pain and fear in my daughter's eyes. For a moment, the idea of giving everything up, of going back to being the old Martha, the invisible Martha, the safe Martha, seemed a tempting relief, an escape from that unbearable pain. But then, I took a deep breath, smelled the familiar scent of home, and composed myself. I sat on the living room rug, in the middle of the circle of toys, and called the 3 children. Bobby and Michael, with curiosity and concern stamped on their childlike faces, snuggled close to Sarah, forming a small trio of eyes fixed on me. We had the most important conversation of our lives, right there, on that floor, under the soft light of the lamp. I explained to them, my voice choked with emotion, but with the conviction that came from my soul and every cell of my being, that I was studying to be a better person, a better mother, so they would be proud. That I wanted to show them, especially Sarah, that women can be anything they want to be, that dreams have no age, that life is a journey of constant learning and overcoming, and that a mother's love never diminishes by her seeking her own happiness. Their reaction was a balm to my wounded soul, a gentle rain that calmed the fire of guilt. Sarah, with her 9 years of precocious wisdom and a maturity that surprised me, hugged me tightly and said, her voice still a little shaky, but full of a new determination that mirrored mine, "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to be a teacher just like you're going to be, so you have to keep studying to teach me everything." Michael, 7 years old, with his contagious energy and a smile that lit up the room, jumped and declared with the enthusiasm of someone who just had a great idea, "I'm going to help you study, Mommy. I can make flashcards and ask you questions." And little Bobby, 5 years old, who still didn't completely understand the complexity of what was happening, but felt the love in the air, just hugged me tightly and said, with the innocent and disarming simplicity of children, "I love you even when you're reading boring books." At that moment, the tears that streamed down my face were not of pain, but of deep gratitude, overwhelming love, and renewed certainty. I realized that I was teaching my children the most important lesson of all, that it's never too late to pursue our dreams, that women are capable of anything, that it's worth fighting for what we believe in, and that a mother's love doesn't diminish when she allows herself to grow, but expands and becomes a living example. But Robert didn't see it that way. He couldn't, or more precisely wouldn't, see my growth as something positive. For him, my education was a direct threat to his authority, a fleeting whim that would soon dissipate, a temporary rebellion that needed to be contained. He began to actively sabotage my studies in small and insidious ways that, combined, formed an insurmountable barrier. He would forget to tell me about important school meetings on Tuesdays, which were my class nights. He would schedule unavoidable family commitments on days I desperately needed to study for crucial exams. Once, I even couldn't find my educational psychology books, which I had carefully stacked on the kitchen table. I searched for hours in every corner of the house, my heart tight with frustration. When I confronted him, my voice filled with suppressed anger. He confessed to having hidden them in the attic, with an air of someone doing a favor. "The children needed your attention, Martha. You were too distracted with those books." As if my knowledge were an enemy of my motherhood, a dangerous distraction that stole me from my true obligations. The last straw, the moment the line irrevocably broke, was in November 1984. I had a very important presentation on child learning theories, a paper worth 30% of the final grade, crucial for my college progress and for the scholarship I so desperately needed. I spent 2 weeks preparing, researching at the library until late at night, rehearsing my speech incessantly, wanting it to be perfect, wanting every word to reflect my effort and my passion. On the morning of the presentation, fate, or perhaps Robert, conspired. Bobby woke up with a high fever, his face pale and sweaty, his little body hot and trembling under the blanket. I asked Robert to stay home with him. It was a real emergency. The boy was truly sick. It wasn't a common cold. I looked at him with the hope that, faced with our child's fragility, he might see the situation with empathy, with a minimum of compassion. Do you know what he said? With a coldness that chilled my soul, that made my blood run cold. "Martha, I have a real job, a job that pays the bills. I can't miss work to take care of a sick child. That's your responsibility, not mine." When I argued, my voice choked with urgency and injustice, that I also had an important responsibility at college, that this wasn't a frivolous pastime, but my future and the future of our children. He laughed, a dry, disdainful laugh that echoed in the kitchen. "Responsibility? You're playing student, Martha. That's not real responsibility. It's an expensive hobby, and I don't have time for your whims." It was at that moment that I understood, with painful and liberating clarity, that Robert was not going to change. He couldn't, or didn't want to, see my growth as something positive, as a natural evolution. For him, I was escaping my true responsibilities, which were those he defined for me, those that kept me small and under his control. My education was a phase, a whim that would soon pass, an aberration he ardently wished would end. The realization was painful, like a deep cut, but at the same time, incredibly liberating. He would never be the partner I needed, the support I deserved. But do you know what I did? With my voice choked with emotion, but with an iron determination that surprised me, I called Mrs. Eleanor. I explained the situation, my voice almost a whisper, fearing that she too would judge me for trying to juggle so many roles, for daring to have ambitions beyond the home. In 15 minutes, she was at my door, the sweet smiling lady with wise eyes, hastily dressed, her hair still a little disheveled, but with a determination that rivaled mine. Her kind eyes conveyed a silent strength. "Go make your presentation, dear. Bobby will stay with me. Don't worry about anything. Just go and shine." And that's how I learned that sometimes our true family is not the one we are born into or marry, but the one we choose and who chooses us back, the people who support us unconditionally in our wildest dreams, who see us and lift us up. I gave the presentation that day, with a heavy heart worrying about Bobby, but my mind focused and my voice firm. I got an A that meant much more than a grade on a report card. It was a trophy of my resilience, a testament to my ability to overcome obstacles. And that night, when Robert, still moody and grim-faced, complained that I had abandoned our sick son to go play student, I stared at him. My voice was calm, but firm, without a shadow of a doubt, charged with a new authority. Robert, I didn't abandon my son. I showed him that mothers also have dreams, and that it's important to fight for them. I showed him that a woman can be more than just a man's shadow, more than the roles society tries to impose. If you can't understand that, the problem isn't mine. It's yours. He looked at me as if I were a stranger, an alien being who had suddenly inhabited his house with a mixture of shock and incomprehension. And perhaps I was, a stranger even to myself, but a stranger who was, finally, finding her voice and her power. That was our last serious conversation as husband and wife, the final nail in the coffin of a marriage that had been dead for a long time. From that day on, we lived in the same house like two polite strangers, inhabitants of parallel worlds that occasionally intersected in rare and tense interactions. He continued with his working late, and I continued with my studies, now not so secret to him. But it was no longer a secret. It was a silent declaration of war, an invisible yet insurmountable line drawn between us, demarcating territories that would never blend again. It was March 1985, my second semester of college, and life, for me, took on a new rhythm, a new color, as if the world had gained a palette of vibrant hues I had never noticed before. I was doing well, excellent grades, genuine and deep friendships with some colleagues who shared the same passion for knowledge, professors who respected me not for my life story, but for my performance, for my insatiable thirst for learning and my dedication. For the first time in years, I felt confident, capable, intelligent, as if a veil had been lifted from my eyes. The Martha who hid in the attic now walked the university hallways with her head held high, her shoulders back, her eyes shining with a new light, with contagious enthusiasm. The Nashville campus, vibrant and full of life, with its old brick buildings and centenary trees, had become my second home, a sanctuary of learning and self-discovery. It was on a sunny Thursday, with the fresh spring air and the smell of freshly cut grass, that everything changed. I was in the campus library, an imposing hall with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, immersed in dusty books on educational psychology, preparing for a crucial upcoming exam. The reverent silence of the environment was broken only by the soft rustle of pages, the occasional scrape of a chair, and the distant clatter of a typewriter. Suddenly, I heard a closer scrape of a chair next to me. I looked up, and my heart jumped, almost stopping, as if it had received an electric shock. It was Robert, my ex-husband. He had never shown up at college before. He had never been interested in knowing where it was, or what I did there, or who I interacted with. But there he was, in a suit and tie, impeccably dressed for the office, visibly out of place, clearly uncomfortable in the academic environment, like a fish out of water, an alien on an unknown planet. His face was pale, a thin layer of sweat covered his forehead, and his restless eyes scanned the room as if searching for an emergency exit. "We need to talk, Martha," was the first thing he said, his voice low and tense, filled with an urgency I hadn't seen in him for a long time, an urgency that sent a shiver down my spine. We left the library and sat on a stone bench outside, under the welcoming shade of an old oak tree whose branches seemed silent witnesses to that unexpected encounter. Robert was nervous, restless, compulsively rubbing his hands, his gaze shifting from mine, fixing on random points on the horizon. Those were signs I knew well. When he got like that, he was either blatantly lying or about to do something drastic, something that took him out of his comfort zone and pushed him into a situation of vulnerability. "Martha, I made a mistake," he began, his voice low and hesitant, almost inaudible, a stark contrast to his former arrogance. It was the voice of a broken man, or one pretending to be broken to manipulate. "A terrible mistake. Linda means nothing to me. Never did. You and the children are my family, the only family that matters. I want us to go back to how we were, Martha. Please." He looked into my eyes for the first time, a look of plea, of contained desperation, almost theatrical. I looked at him, at this man who had been my husband for 10 years, the father of my children, the center of my universe for so long, to whom I had dedicated my youth and my dreams. And to my surprise, to my relief, and to a strange sense of peace that enveloped me, I felt nothing. No corrosive anger, no searing pain of betrayal, no euphoric relief of liberation, just nothing. a complete and utter indifference, as if I were looking at a stranger or a distant memory that no longer belonged to me, a faded photograph of a past that no longer defined me. It was as if my heart, once so vulnerable to him, had built an impenetrable barrier, protecting me from any remnant of emotion that could trap me again. A long, silent pause stretched between us, filled only by the chirping of birds and the distant murmur of passing students, oblivious to the drama unfolding under the oak tree. Martha's inaction at that moment was a response in itself, a testament to the emotional distance and the path of self-discovery she had traveled. He noticed the absence of my expected reaction, tears, anger, immediate acceptance, destabilized him. He hesitated, cleared his throat, and then, in a voice that was barely a whisper, he revealed the truth behind his sudden epiphany, the real reason for his appearance. Linda is moving to Atlanta. She got a better job there. She's going to be head librarian at a big university. And I realized I don't want to lose her again. I don't want to lose you. Ah, Robert. At that moment, I had a clarity I had never had before, an epiphany that illuminated every dark corner of my understanding. The fog that for years had obscured my vision of him and of myself completely dissipated. Robert was not coming back to me out of love, genuine regret, or a sincere desire to rebuild what we had lost. He was coming back because Linda had found something better and had left him. I was Plan B, the safe option, the wife who would always be there when his adventures ended, when the world outside disappointed him and he needed a safe harbor. I was the safe harbor he returned to only when the storm ceased and he had nowhere else to go, when all other doors closed. I was the guarantee, the safety net, never the first choice. I felt a wave of strength invade me, an unshakable serenity that came from a deep certainty. I stood up from the bench, my posture erect, my shoulders back, a clear contrast to Robert's hunched, anxious figure, who seemed to wither before my new resolve. I looked him squarely in the eyes, and my voice came out firm, clear, without a hint of bitterness or resentment, but filled with an undeniable and unquestionable truth. Robert, 2 years ago, you chose Linda over me. You chose adventure, novelty, an escape from your reality and your responsibility. Now, Linda has chosen another life over you. It's not fair for you to expect me to be your second option when your other options don't work. I am not a consolation prize, Robert. My life is not a waiting room for your returns. I am not an object you can store and retrieve at your convenience. He was in shock. His eyes widened. His mouth opened and closed without emitting a sound, like a fish out of water. I think he expected me to burst into tears, to hug him with gratitude, to thank him for giving me another chance to have a marriage, to have a family, that I would welcome him with open arms, relieved that he had come home to the place he imagined was rightfully his. But the Martha of 1985 was no longer the Martha of 1983. The woman he saw now was someone he didn't recognize, someone who had discovered her intrinsic worth, her inner strength, her ability to be whole by herself, without needing a man's validation or presence. "But Martha, I'm your husband. We're a family," he insisted, his voice gaining a tone of despair, of someone watching control slip through their fingers, of someone losing the last shred of power. His phrase, once a pillar of my identity, the anchor that tied me to a life that no longer served me, now sounded empty, hollow, devoid of any real meaning. I replied, with a calm that surprised me, a tranquility that came from the unshakable certainty of my convictions, of my new inner compass. "Robert, you were my husband, but a long time ago you chose not to be anymore. You chose another woman, another life, another priority, while I was bending over backward to maintain a family that only existed on paper, a facade. And family isn't just a piece of paper or people living in the same house out of convenience. Family is support, it's respect, it's true love, it's reciprocity, it's mutual investment. When was the last time you showed any of those things for me? When was the last time you truly saw me, Robert, as a person, not just a role?" He tried to argue again, promised radical changes, said he would support my studies unconditionally, that he would be the husband I deserved, that everything would be different, that he would be a new man. But it was too late. Not because I couldn't forgive. I could. The anger had turned into compassion for him, for his limitations and his inability to see beyond himself, but because I had discovered that I could be happy alone, that my fulfillment did not depend on his presence, that my happiness was not a byproduct of his approval. And that discovery was too precious to risk, to throw away for an empty promise, for a belated and self-serving regret that only arose when he found himself without other options. I returned to the bench, sitting down again, looking at the horizon, at the future that opened before me, vast and full of possibilities. Robert, I don't hate you. Hatred drains the soul, and I no longer have room for it. It would tie me to you, and I am free. But I also don't need you anymore. And that's the fundamental difference between us. 2 years ago, I thought I couldn't exist without you, that my life would be an unbearable emptiness, a desert. Today, I know that I can not only exist, but flourish, prosper, expand. I can fly with my own wings without needing anyone to hold me, to guide me, to define me. Those were the last words I exchanged with him as a wife, the last words of the Martha of the past, the last bridge burned to a new life. He left the campus that day like a man who had lost everything, the shadow of his former self, his arrogance undone, his posture hunched by the weight of his own failure. He left knowing that our marriage was over. Not officially yet. The divorce would only come through 2 years later, a legal formality that would formalize what was already an undeniable reality. But emotionally, spiritually, it had ended a long time ago. It was a tombstone over a relationship that had become meaningless, an epitaph for a love he himself had suffocated. Do you know what I felt when he left, turning his back and disappearing into the horizon, shrinking with each step? Freedom. A freedom I didn't know existed, pure air I hadn't breathed in years, a relief that invaded my body and soul, as if a gigantic weight had been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in my adult life, I belonged only to myself. I was mine, mistress of my destiny, my dreams, my voice, and that, my dears, is priceless. It was the most valuable feeling I had ever experienced, more than any jewel or fortune. The afternoon sun seemed to shine brighter, and the whole world opened up in infinite possibilities before my eyes. I was ready for the next chapter, for my own story, written by me. May 1986. I was finishing my first year of college with excellent grades, a GPA of 3, 8 out of 4, 0, an achievement that seemed unthinkable so recently, considering my history of aversion to math and lack of confidence. I had become one of the professor's favorite students, not just for my grades, but for the genuine passion I showed for learning, for my insatiable curiosity, and for my almost obsessive dedication. Every class was a new window opening to a world of knowledge, every book, a new universe to explore. I was a sponge, absorbing every piece of knowledge, every theory, every nuance of education, with an eagerness that surprised me. My life experience, once seen as a burden or a disadvantage, was now an advantage. It gave me a unique perspective, a depth and resilience that my younger colleagues still lacked. I felt alive, vibrant, constantly expanding, like a butterfly that had just emerged from its cocoon, ready to take flight. That's when I received this letter that changed the course of my life in a way I could never have imagined. It was a simple letter, on letterhead, with the Millbrook Elementary School emblem at the top. The sender was Dr. Peterson, the principal of the same school my children attended, the same school that, for me, represented the pinnacle of a profession I was learning to love and respect. The envelope, slightly yellowed with time, seems like an old treasure in my hands now, an artifact of a watershed moment. I opened it carefully, feeling my fingertips tremble with expectation and a pang of anxiety. He was offering me a position as a teacher's assistant. My dears, you cannot imagine what it means to receive your first job offer at 33 years old after a lifetime dedicated to the home. I had never worked outside the home in my life, had never had a paycheck with my own name on it. I had never earned my own money, not money that was solely the fruit of my work, my skills, my own merit. I had never been professionally recognized for anything other than being Robert's wife or the children's mother. That piece of paper was more than a job offer. It was an invitation to a new life, a validation of my effort, a recognition of who I was becoming, a seal of approval for the new Martha. I reread parts of the letter, my eyes moist, the words dancing before me. each one a balm for my soul. Dear Mrs. Williams, we have learned through Mrs. Eleanor Davis about your excellent academic performance and your passion for education. We have been informed of your inspiring potential and exemplary dedication. We would like to offer you a part-time position as an assistant in the 2nd grade, working directly with the experienced Mrs. Thompson. We believe your contribution will be valuable to our students and the school community. When I read that, I cried for 15 minutes straight, a cry that was an overwhelming mixture of relief, joy, and an overwhelming pride that flooded my chest. It was confirmation that I was on the right path, that every sleepless night, every book studied to exhaustion, every tear of frustration for not understanding a complex concept, every sacrifice had been worth it. It was proof that Mrs. Eleanor's faith in me had not been in vain. The salary was $180 a week. It wasn't much, I knew. It wasn't enough to flaunt luxuries or live lavishly, but it was a start. But it was mine. It was the first time in my life I was going to have money I had earned with my own work, my own skills, my own merit. It carried the weight of my independence, the taste of my freedom, the dignity of my own livelihood. With every grocery purchase, every cent spent, I knew that money had come from my effort, my mind, my hands, and that had an invaluable worth, a taste of accomplishment that no money from Robert had ever given me. But the most important part wasn't the money. It was the recognition. Dr. Peterson had chosen me not because I was Robert's wife, or Sarah, Michael, and Bobby's mother, or the Williams family's daughter-in-law. He had chosen me because he believed in my ability as an educator, because he saw in me a natural talent for teaching, for inspiring, for transforming. For the first time, I was Martha Williams, the educator. It was my identity, forged with effort, passion, and unshakable resilience. On my first day of work, September 1st, 1986, I dressed with as much care as a bride on her wedding day, or a general for a decisive battle. I chose my best navy blue dress, ironed it meticulously, pinned my hair in an elegant bun, and looked at myself in the mirror, almost not recognizing myself. It wasn't the Martha from before, the one who hid behind faded clothes and a dimmed gaze. It was a new woman, with renewed purpose, with a sparkle in her eyes that reflected newfound confidence and the excitement of a new beginning. I walked through the corridors of Millbrook Elementary, not as a visitor, not as a student's mother, but as an employee, as a colleague, as an integral part of that educational community. Each step was firm, resolute, echoing the certainty that now inhabited me. Mrs. Thompson, a veteran teacher of 30 years, with wisdom that overflowed from her eyes and a smile that calmed any soul, welcomed me with open arms, with a warm smile that made me feel immediately at home. Martha, I've known you since you were a little girl. I always knew there was something special about you, a light that was just waiting to be discovered. It's good that you finally discovered it too. Her words, spoken with the sweetness of a friend and the authority of a mentor, touched me deeply, reinforcing the feeling that I was exactly where I should be, in the place I had built for myself. Working with 2nd graders was a revelation, a new universe opening before me, full of challenges and rewards. Every day I discovered something new about myself, about my abilities, about my calling. I had infinite patience to explain the same thing 10 times in different ways, using creative analogies, transforming complex concepts into fun and accessible games. I could identify when a child was having emotional difficulties, not just academic ones, and offered a listening ear, a gentle hug, a word of encouragement that went beyond the curriculum. I had a natural ability to make learning seem fun, to spark curiosity, to light the flame of knowledge in the eyes of the little ones, transforming the classroom into a laboratory of discovery and joy. Look at these photos. This is my first class. Tommy Wilson, a boy who arrived unable to read a single word, with a lost look and low self-esteem, and finished the year reading entire books, with a proud smile on his face, radiating confidence. Lisa Parker, a shy and reserved girl who discovered she loved math, and that her brain was capable of unraveling the mysteries of numbers with surprising ease. Kevin Anderson, who had behavioral problems, a disordered energy that prevented him from concentrating, but who flourished when he discovered he was brilliant in science, transforming his restlessness into enthusiasm for discovery and experimentation. Each small victory of these children was a victory for me too, a confirmation of my purpose, a validation of my life choice. Because I was helping to shape little human beings, to plant seeds of knowledge and confidence that would grow throughout their lives, transforming them into conscious, capable, and fulfilled adults. But the most incredible thing was how the other teachers treated me. Not as Robert's problematic ex-wife, or the mother who abandoned her family to study. They saw me as a colleague, as a professional, as an equal, as someone who belonged in that environment. In pedagogical meetings, my opinion was heard and respected. My ideas were seriously debated. My suggestions were considered and often implemented. I was Martha Williams, the educator, and that was enough. It was the only definition that mattered. At the end of the first semester, Dr. Peterson called me into his office. My heart pounded. I thought I had done something wrong, that I would be reprimanded for some unknown fault, that my dream would be interrupted. But he said, with a wide smile and a sparkle in his eyes that conveyed genuine admiration, "Martha, you have a natural gift for education. The children adore you. Parents are praising your work tirelessly. And Mrs. Thompson, who is as demanding as anyone and has a clinical eye for talent, says you are the best assistant she has ever had. How about thinking about becoming a head teacher?" My voice choked with emotion and a lump formed in my throat. I explained that I was still in college, that I had 2 semesters left to graduate and get my full degree, that I didn't yet have the formal qualification. He smiled and said, with the wisdom of someone who sees beyond the present, who sees potential, "I know that, Martha. I'm talking about the future. I'm talking about when you graduate. When you have your diploma in hand, I would like to offer you a position as a head teacher here at Millbrook Elementary. You belong here, Martha. This is your place." My dears, that was the moment I knew I had found my true calling. It wasn't just a job. It was my purpose, my mission, my place in the world. It wasn't a role I played for others. It was the essence of who I was, the most authentic expression of my soul. That night, sitting in my kitchen, correcting children's assignments under the soft lamplight, I looked back and saw the path I had traveled. Every step, every stumble, every achievement, from an invisible, insecure housewife to a respected and accomplished educator with a promising future ahead. And I thought, with a certainty that filled my soul and brought me deep peace, "Martha, you did it. You really did it. And this is just the beginning." May 20th, 1987. This date is etched in my memory with the intensity of a sacred day, an indelible mark on my journey, the culmination of years of effort, and a visible proof that transformation is possible. 2.5 years after entering Nashville Community College as a scared and doubtful housewife, with fragile self-esteem and a feeling that life had passed me by, I was graduating with honors in elementary education. I was 34 years old, an age that, for many, might seem late to start a career, a fresh start. But for me, it was the pinnacle of a journey of rebirth, the celebration of a new life, the silent cry of victory of a woman who refused to be defined by her circumstances. I was about to receive my first university diploma, a piece of paper that represented much more than the completion of a course. It represented courage, persistence, unwavering faith in myself, and the refusal to accept limitations imposed by myself or others. Look at this photo. It's one of my greatest treasures, an image that encapsulates the pure joy and overwhelming pride of that day, a snapshot of happiness that became a symbol of my legacy. I am in a cap and gown, smiling at the camera, my eyes shining with an intensity I never imagined possessing. Around me, my 3 children, Sarah, Michael, and Bobby, hug me with an affection that transcends words. Sarah, at 11, Michael, at 9, and Bobby, at 7, all radiant, their childlike faces lit up by a smile that mirrored mine. They were as proud of their mother as I was proud of myself. Their faces, once marked by the confusion and pain of the divorce, now radiated a light of admiration and respect, a reflection of my own brilliance, my own strength. Sarah, my little confidant, with her bright eyes and sharp intelligence, said that day, holding my hand tightly with a look of pure admiration that disarmed me, "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to be as brave as you." It was the greatest compliment I have ever received in my life, a recognition worth more than any award or honor, because it came from the hearts of those for whom I had fought so hard. That phrase echoed in my heart, confirming that every sacrifice, every moment of tiredness, every night of study, every tear of frustration for not understanding a complex concept, every moment of doubt and exhaustion had been worth it to become the example they deserved, the woman they could admire, who could inspire them to dream big and to fight for their own goals. The ceremony was in the campus gymnasium, a grand space filled with dreams and hopes, vibrant applause, and emotional celebrations. The air was electrified, and the buzz of voices and laughter filled the environment. When my name was called, Martha Jhonson Williams, Bachelor of Elementary Education, cum laude, I walked to the stage feeling like I was floating, as if my feet barely touched the ground, propelled by an invisible force. It was as if every step was a victory, every fiber of my being vibrating with indescribable joy, a sense of accomplishment and a promising future opening vast before me. Mrs. Eleanor was in the audience, sitting in the front row, her eyes moist, crying more than me, her joy and pride as palpable as mine. Her smile, which accompanied me every step of the journey, from the first hesitant steps in the dusty attic to the graduation podium, was the seal of my victory, the reflection of her unconditional support and her unshakable faith in me, even when I doubted. The most emotional moment was when the dean, Dr. Mitchell, a wise man with a calm voice, handed me the diploma. He whispered in my ear with a gentle smile and a voice filled with sincerity, which resonated deeply in my soul. Mrs. Williams, you are an inspiration to all of us. Your story proves that it is never too late to pursue our dreams, and that resilience is a powerful force that can move mountains. I held that diploma in my hands, feeling the texture of the paper, the weight of the accomplishment, the materialization of years of effort, sleepless nights, moments of anguish, and pure dedication. That piece of paper, which today rests framed in my living room, was not just a diploma. It was not just a certificate of completion of a course. It represented courage, persistence, the rejection of an imposed destiny, and the refusal to accept limitations. It represented the woman I became, forged in adversity and unshakable determination, a woman who discovered her own strength and purpose. But the journey was just beginning. With the diploma in hand, Dr. Peterson, honoring his promise with the integrity I so admired and with the vision that few possess, sought me out again. In August 1987, I began my career as a full-time third-grade teacher at Millbrook Elementary School, my own classroom, a space that was mine, to shape, to inspire, to teach, to create a welcoming and stimulating learning environment, a true home away from home for the children. 22 8-year-old students, each with their unique personality, their individual challenges, their limitless potential, waiting to be discovered and cultivated. I decorated that room as if it were my private palace, my sanctuary of learning, a reflection of the vibrant soul I had rediscovered, of the joy that now inhabited me. Every detail was thought out with a tenderness that overflowed from my heart and a passion I barely knew I possessed. Colorful posters with inspiring quotes about curiosity, resilience, and the joy of learning adorned the walls, a constant reminder of the values I wanted to instill, the seeds of a bright future. There was a cozy reading corner, with soft cushions and inviting books, where imagination could take flight freely. And the teaching materials, from vibrant flashcards and educational games to felt boards I lovingly sewed myself, many of which I created with passion and creativity during long planning nights, were impeccably organized, awaiting the touch of small, curious hands. It was a space that represented me, that nurtured me, and that, I hoped, would also nurture the hundreds of children who would pass through it. It was a place where the joy of learning was almost palpable, where every child, regardless of their history or difficulties, would feel seen, valued, and above all, capable. The first day as Miss Williams, no longer Mrs. Williams, nor the assistant, but simply Miss Williams, a title that carried a new weight and an unexpected sweetness, was magical and unforgettable. When parents, with a mixture of hope and anxiety, left their little treasures in my room, they were entrusting me with the most precious thing they had, their children. This responsibility, so great and so sacred, made me humble and, at the same time, filled me with an unshakable determination. I felt I had found my true calling, my deepest purpose. With every innocent smile, every curious glance, Every little hand extended in search of knowledge, I felt the confirmation that I was exactly where I should be. During the first few months, I dedicated myself body and soul to my new vocation. I worked 12 hours a day, arriving at school at 7 in the morning to plan my lessons and prepare the environment, and leaving only at 6 in the evening, often with piles of papers to grade and new ideas to develop. I took work home, planned lessons late into the night, researched new teaching methodologies, always seeking the best, the most effective, the most inspiring. I was determined to be not just a good teacher, but an exceptional teacher. Someone who made a difference in the life of every child who passed through my classroom. And you know something I discovered? Teaching children taught me about myself, about my own strengths and vulnerabilities, about the infinite capacity of human beings to learn and grow. Every time I helped a child overcome a difficulty, whether academic or emotional, I remembered my own journey of overcoming, my own battle against invisibility and insecurity. Every time I saw the proud smile of a student who finally understood a difficult concept or who could read a word that once seemed a mystery, I remembered my own joy when I passed the GED, when I received my diploma. It was a cycle of learning and empowerment. This notebook, I say, showing a worn but carefully kept album, is full of letters from parents and students over the years. Each one is a treasure, a testament to the impact I had on their lives. Miss Williams helped my daughter love reading, says one. My son never liked school until he had classes with you, writes another. You changed our family's life, not just our son's, a third emotional one says. Each of these letters, each drawing, each word of thanks is worth more than any salary, any material recognition. They are the true wealth of my life, the legacy I built with love and dedication. But the most important recognition, the one that publicly validated all my effort, came 5 years later, in 1992. I was named Teacher of the Year for Hamilton County. 39 years old, only 5 years into teaching, and I was being recognized as the best educator among hundreds of experienced and dedicated colleagues. I could barely believe it. Emotion consumed me, a mixture of disbelief and deep gratitude. At the awards ceremony, the superintendent, a serious-faced man, but with a warm smile that day, said, in a voice that echoed through the auditorium, Martha Williams represents the best in education, passion, dedication, and the unshakable belief that every child can learn and thrive. She is a beacon of inspiration to all of us. When I went up on stage to receive the award, an elegant and shiny trophy, I looked at the audience and saw faces that had accompanied my journey. Mrs. Eleanor, my angels on earth, with a smile of pure joy and eyes moist with tears. Dr. Peterson, the man who believed in me and gave me my first chance. Fellow teachers who welcomed and supported me. And, most importantly of all, my 3 proud children, applauding on their feet with a sparkle of admiration in their eyes. At that moment, I knew I had found my place in the world. It wasn't just a job or a profession. It was my calling, my purpose, my way of making the world a little better. Working in education for 25 years taught me that it's never too late to plant a seed. Every student who passed through my classroom took a piece of knowledge, confidence, and love, and each of them planted in me the certainty that I chose the right path, the path that fulfilled me, that made me the woman I was always destined to be. Now, at 72, with 25 years of teaching under my belt and 6 grandchildren who fill me with joy and rejuvenate me every day, sitting here on my porch with a warm cup of tea in my hands and the morning sun caressing my face, I want to share with you the most important lessons I learned on this journey of transformation. Lessons not found in books, but etched in my soul, sculpted by life experience, lessons that became the compass that guides me. The first lesson is about courage. My dears, courage is not the absence of fear. That's a dangerous illusion. Courage is feeling fear and doing it anyway. It's taking the first step even when your legs tremble. It's facing the unknown with a racing heart. Every time I opened a math book, I was afraid I wouldn't be able to do it, that my mind simply wouldn't be able to understand. Every time I walked into a new classroom full of unknown children and parents, I was afraid I wouldn't be good enough, that I would fail in my mission. But I did it anyway. I didn't let fear paralyze me. I used it as fuel, a reminder that I was stepping out of my comfort zone, that I was growing. Every small act of courage, no matter how small it seemed, built the strong and resilient woman I am today. Courage is not one grand, singular act. It is the sum of small, daily decisions to move forward, despite uncertainties and the internal voices that try to diminish us. The second lesson is about time. I always heard people say, with an air of disapproval or pity, "But Martha, you'll be graduating at 34. Isn't that too late? You're wasting your time with this?" As if age were a sentence, an expiration date for dreams. As if there were an invisible finish line that, once crossed, nullified all possibilities of starting over. But you know what? I was going to turn 34 anyway. Life wouldn't stop and wait for me. The question I asked myself, and that I ask you now, was, did I want to turn 34 with a diploma, with a new purpose, with the feeling of having fought for myself, or without a diploma, stuck in the same routine, in the same place of invisibility and regret? Age is just a number, a marker on the calendar. What really matters is what we do with the time we are given. It's never too late to be who you truly are, to pursue what makes you happy, to start a new chapter. The right time is a trap. The right time is always now, when the desire to change becomes stronger than the fear of trying. The third lesson is about support. No one, and I repeat, no one achieves anything alone in this life. The idea that we need to be solitary heroes is a fallacy that prevents us from asking for help and connecting with others. Mrs. Eleanor, the women from the church who formed my support network, the teachers who believed in me and encouraged me, the colleagues who welcomed me and made me feel part of a community, all were fundamental. They were the pillars that sustained me, the voices that encouraged me when my own voice failed, the arms that lifted me when I fell. But I also learned that sometimes support doesn't come from where we expect it. It doesn't always come from blood family, from your spouse, from longtime friends, and that's okay. We learn to seek and value those who truly care about our growth, who see us and lift us up, regardless of blood ties or the past. Be the support for someone, and allow others to be the support for you. Cultivating a support network is an investment in your own well-being and success. The fourth lesson is about identity. For years, I defined myself by others: Robert's wife, the children's mother, the Williams family's daughter-in-law. I shrank within those roles, believing they were the totality of my existence, the only way to fit in, to be loved. I lost myself along the way. I forgot who Martha was, the woman behind those titles. When I finally discovered who Martha was, independent of all those roles, of others' expectations, my life changed completely. I freed myself. I became whole by myself. Do you know who you are beyond the roles you play in your lives? Beyond mother, wife, daughter, professional, friend? What is your essence? What is your passion? What is your voice? That's the most important question you can ask yourselves. The journey of self-discovery is continuous and liberating, and that's where true fulfillment lies. The fifth lesson, and perhaps one of the most difficult, is about forgiveness. I had to forgive Robert for the betrayal, yes. But, more importantly, I had to forgive myself for having been invisible for so many years, for having nullified myself, for having allowed my light to dim. Forgiveness, my dears, is not for those who hurt us. It's not for the other person. It's for ourselves. It's to free ourselves from the weight of resentment, bitterness, guilt, the pain we carry. It's an act of self-love, a liberation that allows us to move forward, light and at peace. Forgiveness frees us, not the other person. It's an active process of detaching from pain, which allows us to rewrite our narrative without the burden of the past. And the most important lesson of all, the one that encapsulates my entire journey, is this: it's never too late to start over. I began my transformation at 30, an age when many women feel their lives are already defined, that doors are closing. I graduated at 34, became a head teacher at 34, was recognized as the best teacher at 39. Some women start at 50, at 60, at 70. The only wrong age to start is tomorrow, the day that never comes, the excuse that prevents us from acting. If I had waited for the right time, the perfect moment, I'd still be waiting today. The right time is now. Life doesn't wait for you. The right time is when you decide you deserve more, that you are capable of more, that you are worth more. Many of you, I know, must be wondering, what about Robert? What happened to him after all this, after our divorce, after I found my way? Well, life has an interesting way of teaching us lessons, doesn't it? And often, those lessons are hard, especially for those who refuse to learn. Robert moved from Millbrook in 1988, right after our divorce was finalized. He went to Nashville, trying to start over there, perhaps seeking the same freedom I had found, but in an empty and superficial way. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he had other relationships, many of them, but none lasted long. It seems he never managed to adapt to the idea of independent women, women who had their own dreams, their own voices, who weren't content to be just an appendage in a man's life. He was looking for the old Martha, the one who made herself small, the one who nullified herself, and that Martha no longer existed. His inability to recognize and value others' evolution and his own stagnation condemned him to a cycle of dissatisfaction. Her voice, as she told it, held no bitterness, only a soft sadness, a melancholy that came from understanding the tragedy of a life not lived to its fullest, of a growth opportunity he wasted. In 2003, 15 years after our divorce, he showed up at my door. He hadn't announced himself, just appeared, like a ghost from the past. He was older, more tired. The arrogance from before had transformed into a visible resignation. And to my surprise, to his surprise, and to my own, he was visibly remorseful. "Martha," he said, his voice choked, his eyes fixed on mine. "I made the biggest mistake of my life when I lost you. It took me years to understand how special you were, how valuable the life we had was." I talked with him for a few hours that afternoon, sitting in my living room, now so full of light and my memories, of trophies and books, of photos of my children and grandchildren. He told me about the difficult years, about how empty he felt, about how he never found with another woman the stability, complicity, and true love we had at the beginning of our marriage, before he destroyed it. He seemed genuinely lost, a man who had traded gold for dust, and who only now, in old age, realized the extent of his loss. Reflective pause. Do you know what I felt for him during that conversation? Compassion. Not anger, not vengeful satisfaction, not the long-awaited, "I told you so." Just compassion for a man who had lost his family, his chance at happiness, his own dignity for not knowing how to value what he had, for being too small to keep up with my growth, for being so trapped in his own selfishness. That encounter was a silent testament that true victory is not revenge, but the peace and freedom that come from forgiveness and acceptance. Her voice becomes firmer, with the wisdom that only time and experience bring. When he, with a glimmer of hope in his tired eyes, asked me if there was any possibility of us trying again, of rebuilding what we had destroyed, I held his hands in mine with all the gentleness in the world, with the tenderness of someone calming a child, but with the firmness of someone certain of her path. "Robert, I wish you all the happiness in the world, truly. But we are two different people now. We have been walking in opposite directions for a long time. You lost the dependent woman I was, the woman who nullified herself to fit you, and I found the independent woman I was always destined to be. There is no longer room for both of us together in the same life." My answer was not one of rejection, but of recognition of incompatible realities. He died in 2018, at the age of 73. I went to the funeral, yes. I went out of respect for the years we spent together, out of gratitude for the 3 wonderful children we raised together, for having been, in his own twisted way, the catalyst for my transformation. Sarah, Michael, and Bobby cried at the loss of their father, as was natural, as was just, because despite everything, he was their father. And I cried too, not for the ex-husband, not for the loss of a love that had already faded, but for the man he could have been if he had chosen to grow with me, instead of trying to hold me back. I cried for the unfulfilled promise, for the life that could have been different for him. Now I want to tell you what I am most proud of in life, how my children turned out. Because, my dears, the greatest proof that I made the right decisions is to see the kind of adults they became, the legacy I built through my own example. Sarah is now 47 years old. She is a pediatric doctor in Nashville, a brilliant and compassionate professional dedicated to caring for children. She is married to a wonderful man, a university professor who respects her, supports her dreams, and truly admires her, an example of an egalitarian partnership. They have 2 beautiful daughters, Emma and Grace, my granddaughters, who are the light of my days. Sarah always tells me, with a sparkle in her eyes that fills me with pride, "Mom, you taught me that women can be anything they want to be, that there are no limits to our dreams, that knowledge and independence are the greatest riches. That's why I had the courage to go to medical school and follow my own path." Her life is a living testament to my journey and the strength of female example. Michael, at 45, is a civil engineer and built his own company here in Tennessee, a man of vision and steady hands. He is married to Rebecca, a teacher, imagine that, who shares the same passion for education. They have 3 children, my grandchildren Tyler, Madison, and Lucas, who fill my house with laughter and play. Michael always treats Rebecca as his equal partner, a relationship built on mutual respect, admiration, and collaboration. I see in him the respect for women that I tried to teach through my example, the appreciation for female intelligence and autonomy. He is proof that men can be powerful allies in building a more equitable world. And little Bobby, who is now 43, the youngest who one day hugged me saying he loved me even when I read boring books, became a school psychologist. He dedicates himself to helping children and adolescents who face emotional, social, and academic challenges, often invisible to the hurried eyes of the world. They are the most fragile, those who most need an attentive gaze, active listening, and an open heart to unravel their fears and enhance their capabilities. Bobby always says he chose this profession because he saw in me, his mother, living proof of how the presence of an empathetic and inspiring adult can transform a child's trajectory. He witnessed firsthand how I, over the years, not only taught subjects, but was a figure of support, a confidant, a mentor for hundreds of students. He carries my passion for education and caring for others, but in a new guise, adapted to the complex challenges of mental health and emotional well-being in 21st century youth. All 3 supported me throughout my journey, every step of my ascent. Of course, there were difficult moments, especially during the divorce, when confusion, pain, and uncertainty hit them hard. I remember sleepless nights, difficult conversations, and tears that seemed endless. But instead of breaking us, these challenges united us in an even deeper way. They grew up seeing that changes, even the most painful ones, can be catalysts for positive transformations. They learned that it's never too late to pursue dreams, that resilience is an unshakable force, and that women deserve respect, independence, and the freedom to seek their own fulfillment. They saw in me the proof that adult life can be a constant evolution, a fertile ground for self-knowledge and rediscovery, and that purpose can be found at any age, in any circumstance. The most beautiful thing of all is to see how they raise their own children. My 6 grandchildren, Emma, Grace, Tyler, Madison, Lucas, and Sophie, are growing up in a family where men and women are treated as equals, where education is valued above all, not just as a means to an end, but as a path to self-development and full citizenship. Courage is taught through the living example of their parents and their grandmother, who always encourage them to question, to explore, and to stand up for what they believe in. There are no privileges or predefined roles based on gender. There is only mutual respect, cooperation, shared responsibility, and the constant pursuit of growth and happiness for all. It is my legacy, pulsating and blossoming through new generations, a tree whose roots deepen each year, and whose fruits are the promise of a more just and equitable future. Sarah once told me, in a moment of confession, that deeply moved me and made me shed tears of gratitude. "Mom, when I was little, sometimes I got angry because you spent hours studying instead of playing with me, or because you were too tired to give me your full attention after an exhausting day. I didn't understand, but today I perfectly understand that you weren't taking time away from me. You were investing in my future, in all of our futures. You showed me with every book you read, every class you attended, every test you passed, that I could be anything, that I could dream big, that I could be strong and independent, and that knowledge is the greatest tool for freedom. My dears, there is no greater gift for a mother than to know that her children have learned the right lessons, that they have become upright, happy, and purposeful adults, and that the path you forged has become a beacon for them. It is the most abundant, sweetest, and most meaningful harvest I could wish for. I retired from education in 2012 at the age of 59, After 25 years transforming children's lives, planting seeds of knowledge, curiosity, and hope in every little heart that passed through my classroom. It was a difficult, even painful decision because I loved every day in the classroom, every interaction with my students, every pedagogical challenge, every shared discovery. The passion for teaching still burned in my chest with the same intensity as when I started, but my body, that old travel companion, was asking for rest. My knees could no longer keep up with the children's pace. The hours on my feet became more tiring, and I felt it was time to make way for new generations of educators. Besides, I wanted to enjoy my grandchildren while I still had the vitality and energy to run with them in the backyard, to read them the most fantastic stories, to teach them about the wonders of the world and life. But retirement, for me, did not mean stopping. It did not mean sitting in a rocking chair and watching life pass by. It meant, yes, starting a new phase, unfolding new possibilities, finding new ways to serve and grow. My garden, which for so many years was a refuge and a mirror of my soul, flourished with a new intensity, and I dedicated myself to it with the same passion and meticulousness with which I taught. I started volunteering to teach adult literacy classes at the Millbrook Library, my old starting point. How many women like me did I help get their GEDs over the years? Each of them was me, 10, 20, 30 years earlier. Women who had left school to take care of their families, who had silenced their own academic dreams and aspirations, but who now, in maturity, sought a new chance, a new voice, a new identity through knowledge. It was like closing a cycle, reaching out to past versions of myself and showing them that the future is always possible, that education is a portal that opens at any age. I also started writing. Yes, at 60, I discovered I had stories to tell, not just in the classroom, but in the pages of a book. That aptitude for English and history that Mrs. Eleanor had noticed in me back when I was getting my GED blossomed into a new passion. I wrote a book on innovative teaching methodologies, covering the effective and student-centered approaches I had developed and applied throughout my career. The book detailed strategies for engaging students of different backgrounds, formative assessment techniques, and the importance of creating an inclusive and motivating learning environment. To my surprise and immense joy, it was published by the University of Tennessee Press. Just imagine, Martha Jhonson Williams, published author. The feeling of seeing my name on the cover of a book, my ideas printed and accessible to other educators across the country, was indescribable. Yet another proof that life always holds wonderful surprises for us, if only we are open to them and dare to take the next step. But the project I am most proud of, the one that most touches my heart and fills me with purpose, is the Brave Women program I founded here in Millbrook. Every month, my garden and my house fill with laughter, confessions, tears, and hope. Women of all ages and stories gather here. Some are leaving abusive relationships and seeking to rebuild their lives and self-esteem. Others want to go back to school and earn new degrees to advance professionally. Others want to start their own businesses and launch new careers, and many simply seek a safe space to be heard and understood. We talk, share experiences, cry together over past pains, laugh at small present victories, and most importantly, we support each other in every new challenge. We offer practical workshops on basic financial planning, assertive communication skills, entrepreneurship basics, and even coaching sessions for job interviews. It's like that network of church women who helped me in the past, but expanded with an even clearer and more direct purpose of female empowerment. We have already helped more than 200 women restart their lives, find their own voices, discover their own courage, and forge new paths. Each success story, each woman who rises and flourishes, is a victory for all of us. Another brick in building a stronger, more resilient, and more empowered community. I also travel around the state, giving lectures on female empowerment and adult education. Who would have thought that insecure Millbrook housewife, who could barely speak in public without stammering and who felt invisible, would one day be on stage at universities, community centers, and conferences, inspiring other women with her own story, sharing the lessons life taught her. Life is full of delicious ironies, isn't it? It's proof that everyone's voice, however silenced it may have been, has the power to resonate and transform. And at 72, I still have new dreams. I want to write more books, perhaps an autobiography detailing this journey you've just read, or a practical guide for women who want to start over. I want to expand the Brave Women program to other cities, maybe even create a replicable model so other communities can implement it. I want to see my grandchildren grow up and achieve their own dreams. I want to keep learning and growing because curiosity and the thirst for life never run out. Life doesn't stop when we reach 70. Sometimes it just gets more interesting, richer, more fulfilling. It's a constant invitation to renewal, to discovery, to celebrating each new day, and to the certainty that there's always more to learn, more to give, and more to live. My dears, we have reached the end of my story, but I hope it is just the beginning of yours. I want to leave some final words for you who have stayed with me this far, for you who have given me the honor of your attention and allowed yourselves to immerse yourselves in my journey. These are the truths that life whispered to me, the lessons I fought so hard to learn, and which I now share with all my heart, hoping they resonate in your souls. First, you are stronger than you imagine. I thought I was just a worthless housewife, a rough sketch of a woman, that my life was already laid out and I had no control over it. Society, my environment, even a love that diminished me, made me believe that. But there was an educator, a leader, a brave woman waiting to be discovered, hidden beneath layers of others' expectations and a distorted self-image. What extraordinary person is hidden inside you, just waiting for your permission to emerge? What unexplored talents, what silenced passions, what dormant dreams await to be freed? Look within, with courage and honesty. The power to transform your life resides in you and in no one else. Second, it's never too late. I began my transformation at 30, graduated at 34, achieved professional fulfillment at 40. Some women start at 50, at 60, at 70. There's no expiration date for happiness, for learning, for flourishing. The only wrong age to start is tomorrow, that illusory tomorrow that never comes, the convenient excuse that prevents us from taking the first step. Time will pass anyway, regardless of your choices. The question is, do you want it to pass while you regret what could have been, or while you build the life you've always dreamed of? The time to act is now, this instant. Third, you don't need anyone's permission to be happy. Not your husband's, your parents', your children's, society's, your friends', your neighbors'. The only permission you need is your own. Happiness is an active choice, a path built by you, and not a condition that depends on external approval or the fulfillment of shoulds imposed by others. Free yourself from the shackles of others' expectations, the labels that try to define you, and the "you can'ts" that echo in your mind. Your happiness is your responsibility and your inalienable right. Fourth, surround yourself with people who believe in you. Mrs. Eleanor changed my life because she saw in me what I couldn't see. She watered the seeds of courage that were dormant. Find your Mrs. Eleanors, those people who push you up, who give you strength when you falter, who support you unconditionally in your boldest dreams. And be the Mrs. Eleanor for other women, because together we are stronger, and the journey becomes lighter, richer, and more meaningful when shared. Build your tribe, your support committee, your sisterhood network. And finally, your story doesn't end when someone abandons you, betrays you, or diminishes you. Your story restarts when you decide you deserve more, that you are capable of more, that you are worth more. The end of a cycle is not the end of your journey. It's an invitation to a new beginning, to a new blank page, to a new opportunity to rewrite your own destiny with more vibrant and meaningful inks. Life is an open book, and you are the main author with the power to turn the page and start an even more extraordinary chapter. My name is Martha Jhonson Williams. I am 72 years old, mother of 3, grandmother of 6, retired educator, author, speaker, and above all, I am a woman who discovered her own worth, her own voice, her own strength. And every day, I continue learning, continue growing, continue flourishing with the same curiosity and passion as always. Now tell me, who are you, beyond the roles you play? And more importantly, who do you want to become? What story do you want to tell yourselves and the world? Leave your own stories of overcoming, your doubts, your dreams in the comments. Let's create a community of women who support each other, who inspire each other, who lift each other up, who remember the power that exists within each of us. And remember, If a Millbrook, Tennessee housewife managed to rewrite her story at 30, you can rewrite yours too. It's never too late to bloom. If this story touched your heart, share it with other women who need to know that transformation is possible. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming and female empowerment.